Kia ora, talofa, namaste, haere mai, and welcome to this week's episode of the Nishcast podcast. We are here in honor of and service of Aotearoa sport. Got a couple of funky topics on the agenda this week, so however you're listening, if you're in the car, in some traffic, maybe you're out for a little walk in the rain, run in the rain, what a glorious feeling. Maybe you just got this on while you're cooking some kai. However you're absorbing this Aotearoa sporting information, thank you for lending us your ears, your taringa, and hopefully you enjoy our Aotearoa sporting content. We are always writing about our Aotearoa sport on our website, theniche-case.com. Fresh yarns. I did a little deep dive into Matt Henry. The wildcard has his regular Flying Kiwis thingy-majig up, as well as a Sean Marks deep dive. Sean Marks, one of the most, I was about to say powerful, influential. I don't know what Sean Marks is in the NBA, but he's from Aotearoa and he's in an interesting spot. And we have talked about it a few times on the variety show. The Wildcard has also written about it now as well. And there's just always some funky Aotearoa sporting yarns to read. So if you're into reading, if you can read and you like to read about Aotearoa sport, jump on over to our website, theniche-case.com. And the best way to support all our content is through Patreon. Patreon.com/elnichecase, elnichecase. We did another glorious cricketing podcast for the Patreon whānau earlier in the week, and we are always appreciative of our Patreon whānau supporting us always. So shout out to them, and the best way to support our content is via Patreon, and also just like word of mouth, tell a friend, check in with the website every day, subscribe to the YouTube channel so we can get a few numbers up there. Jump on the social medias if you do like a bit of social media, but we always encourage you to get off social media. We don't want you scrolling Facebook. We don't want you scrolling Twitter. We don't want any of that shit. So just make sure you go directly to us, theniche-case.com, and you can also just check your email inbox every Monday and Friday evening, because that's where our email newsletter comes to you via Substack, thenichecase.substack.com. All the Niche Case content is part of that email newsletter, links to our big yarns, all the podcast information is there, and we whip up some special yarns for each email we send out every Monday and Friday evening. So sign up to that as well. And we start our podcast. Let's start the podcast with a dose of mindfulness. Wildcard, what do you got?
Well, I'm going off the book today because I didn't have anything else lined up, so I had to grab something at the last minute. But from Lao Tzu, Tao Te Ching, those who know they have enough are truly wealthy.
Having enough is always an interesting test of mindfulness.
Yeah.
And I've had a few instances, like just a few things, like when you fill up the jug too much and it starts to boil, all that water just starts pouring out of the jug. When you're whipping up a bone broth brew, right? You got to stir it quite vigorously to make sure the bone broth powder is dissolved in the hot water. If you fill up that cup too much and then you give it a vigorous stir, a lot of that water's going over the top of the cup. And it's both of those things have happened recently, so I just thought top of mind, when you go beyond enough, then things start to get messy. And coming back to enough, like, I have eaten enough. I don't need to eat more. I've eaten enough. I have made enough money. I have done enough work. And I think just tapping into enough is always a good thing. Of course, when you're wanting to do some mahi, it's always good to go above and beyond. But when we're talking about, I have enough. I do not need more. I have enough, and that is all good, and I'm grateful for all that I do have.
Yeah, it did sound like you were drawing from recent experiences when you started going through those. I've been in that situation many a time, though, when you fill up the jug just a bit too much and then it starts boiling and then it starts bubbling out of the little like nozzle and then spilling everywhere, and that's no fun. Yeah, that's also a regular personal experience of my own. I mean, what you're saying about like when you're trying to when you're doing the mahi and trying and you want to go above and beyond, that's also because you feel you haven't done enough, right? Like you haven't got to the point of enough. But once you get to the point of enough and like your back is too sore to keep pushing the wheelbarrow or whatever, that's yeah, that's also a good time to stop. It's in a similar thing. But yeah, just the value of knowing when you've topped out, like when you've got enough, when you don't need more, like in a world of finite resources, that's really important, especially because you not taking more than you need leaves more for others in order for them to get up to what they consider to be enough as well. It's also a way of sharing in its own way of saying like, I'm just going to take what I need and not what I'm not going to take everything I can carry. I'm just going to take what I need, kind of thing.
And the glorious thing, the reliability of nature is soothing, and nature has ways of regulating enough,
Yeah.
right? Like when you eat
Yes.
too much and you go beyond, I have eaten enough, things happen in your body to remind you that you overate. Or when you are working too much and you have gone beyond, I have done enough, your body starts to tell you that you're doing too much. And that can be applied in all different aspects of doing enough and having enough. Is when you go beyond that, nature has a bunch of different ways to tell you, all right, mate, just chill out. You've got enough and it's all good. And it's just the glorious thing about nature is it regulates as long as you're tuned in, as long as you're tapped in and you're aware of these instances, and especially with yourself and your body and how you're feeling.
It does work externally as well too, doesn't it? Where like, you know, too much livestock on a paddock and suddenly that like, that grass, that land isn't good for much anymore because it's been stomped into just like neutrality. Soil has been damaged and whatever. Like that's just one example of many others. But it's yeah, but nature will regulate those things outside of your own body as well. They'll do things from the external factor and be like, hold on, wait a minute, this isn't how it works.
Correct. One thought I've been pondering wildcard, especially after recent events, is the Black Caps are playing this morning. They're playing an ODI against the West Indies at the time of recording, and just working through some of this Black Cap stuff over the past week or so. One thing that stuck with me is who benefits from Trent Boult's decision to opt out of his New Zealand cricket contract and essentially play less cricket for Aotearoa. Which bowler benefits from that? And I kind of thought a bit about this with Matt Henry when I was writing about him this morning, because Matt Henry is a world-class ODI bowler, and I initially had this like blanket thought of Trent Boult plays less cricket, Matt Henry plays more cricket. But it's a bit more nuanced than that, because you've got someone like Matt Henry is one of the best ODI bowlers in the world, and like that's actually quite true, because Trent Boult's one of the best ODI bowlers, and Matt Henry's average is like, I think Trent Boult's average is 25.21, Matt Henry's average is 25.22. So if Trent Boult's one of the best ODI bowlers in the world, Matt Henry's also one of the best ODI bowlers in the world. Tim Southee's not one of the best ODI bowlers in the world. So Trent Boult dipping out of the ODI team might lead to more game time for Tim Southee. Matt Henry, regardless how I think of him as a T20 bowler, he's not really in the Black Caps T20 international mix. So which bowler benefits from Boult's absence? And the key thing here is that Trent Boult is, I believe, he's the best seamer in the world because he's excellent in all three formats. And that leads to a more nuanced discussion about which bowler benefits from Trent Boult's absence, because it's a different bowler in each format. So how are you kind of thinking about that void left by Trent Boult playing less cricket?
Yeah, that's a good point, isn't it? It's someone different in every format that's going to get that opportunity. And it might also be different in each format because Boult's likely to play different quantities of each format. It sounds like he's still probably gonna sneak in a few, particularly home test matches, maybe not so many away ones, but hopefully a few home test matches over summers and stuff like that, in which case no one benefits because it's just the same team. But if Boult is missing on some of those overseas ones, particularly like we've seen this, we saw this in England. We've seen this in some of their, when they went to the UAE a couple years ago, I think was another example. Definitely when they were in India recently, when they need to pick a spinner. And it's not even when they need to pick a second spinner; it's when they need to pick that first spinner who doesn't tend to play when it's home games, which will be Ajaz Patel still. Someone has got to drop out of the seam bowling lineup, and on occasion, I think, well, on occasion it has been Tim Southee. Usually, it has been Neil Wagner, and Neil Wagner has two things going for him in that regard. So if Trent Boult's not there, then Wagner's more likely to play just because of the numbers thing. Also, Neil Wagner, left arm bowler. That helps as well because Trent Boult does not really have a like-for-like successor anywhere near the Black Caps realm in terms of like left arm swing bowlers. Neil Wagner is the only dude, and he only plays one format, so this only applies to the test team. But the rest of them, it's like whoever's going to step up for Trent Boult, well, you just got to cycle through all our right armers because there's no left armer that's really in that kind of vicinity. So Neil Wagner probably benefits in the test thing just in that regard because the games that Boult is certainly going to miss are mostly going to be overseas ones, and that's where Neil Wagner has often been seen as the sacrificial lamb. The other formats where I think we're going to see hardly any Trent Boult, probably. I don't think Trent Boult will play pretty much any 2020s outside of the World Cup coming up. Might even be the last time he plays 2020s. At least that's what my instinct seems to tell me. So I don't know who benefits there because Trent Boult doesn't play a lot of 2020s anyway. He only plays about half the games as it is. So I think it's every man for themselves as it was. Maybe Lockie Ferguson gets a little bit more prominence as like the pace bowling leader of that attack, given that that's what his statistics say. As for ODI cricket, probably is Tim Southee, yeah, because Matt Henry is playing alongside Trent Boult whenever the two of them are available. Like they're both playing. There's no dramas there. Maybe, I don't know, the other thing with Lockie Ferguson to say that if he benefits by stepping up and maybe getting to open the bowling a little bit more often, I don't know, but also he has to stay fit enough to be available for all these games, which has been an issue. So it's a little bit of a tricky one, and it's a really interesting sort of angle to take on the Trent Boult thing, isn't it? It's like you have this absence supposedly that suddenly pops up in the team who steps up to fill it, and it's kind of like a tricky problem to solve uniquely in each of those three formats, isn't it?
Yeah, and two things stand out from that. The lack of a left armer definitely will be something interesting to keep an eye on moving forward. Neil Wagner barely plays cricket, so he could shine as like someone who gets more opportunities, which goes like everyone's going to think Neil Wagner, he's fucking 50 years old, he's going to retire soon. But Neil Wagner only plays test cricket and he doesn't play a lot of it. So there could be a longer tail to his career in the same way that Neil Wagner extends the Black Caps batting tail. His career tail could get a bit longer just because he doesn't really play much cricket. And apart from that, all the left armers are kind of a couple tiers below the fringe black cappy bowlers. Like we're talking about guys like Ben Lister is one. Ray Toole is playing in England at the moment. He's playing one-day cup cricket. He's a lefty, I believe. And there's just not many of them who are going to be commanding Black Caps opportunities. Ed Nuttall's the Canterbury lefty. There are a couple lefties sprinkled across the domestic landscape, but they're not even in the fringe Black Caps zone, let alone showing signs of Trent Boult-esque skills. So The only way I can see a lefty for lefty replacement is Neil Wagner getting more opportunities, and none of us are going to be like, nah, fuck Neil Wagner. We all want to see Neil Wagner play a lot more cricket for Aotearoa, so that's all good. Don't think Neil Wagner's playing white ball cricket though, so there is this little hole of a lefty in the Black Caps seam attack, and we've become accustomed to having a fantastic swing bowling lefty who can move the ball both ways. Then you've also got this factor that the Black Caps have kind of already been preparing for this. As you said, Trent Boult has already been dictating his availability. Like, he has already played a lot less cricket in recent years compared to what he was doing in the years before that. So a bunch of bowlers have been getting experience to kind of fill that void, and there's definitely been a shift going back to that Bangladesh series last year where like a B team toured Bangladesh and the whole kind of bowling stocks have shifted. And the bowling stocks have shifted with Ben Sears rising further up the depth chart. So he was in that Bangladesh tour, whereas other dudes like a Scott Kugelheim or a Hamish Bennett or a Doug Bracewell, those type of characters have all dropped away. And Ben Sears has kept rising. I think you're going to see Ben Sears, if he hasn't already, he's overtaken Jacob Duffy as a white ball option. Now evidence in his selection in the ODI squad with Matt Henry dropping out injured. So he's kind of risen up the ranks. But a lot of the dudes who were benefiting when Trent Boult was not playing a random T20 international series against Pakistan or Bangladesh or West Indies in the Kiwi summer, those dudes are no longer really in the equation. Specifically someone like Scott Kugelheim, I think you're going to see Blair Tickner either, like, he's kind of on the cusp. He could go make a big run for Black Caps cricket, or he could fall away and be overtaken by someone like Ben Sears, which again may have already happened beneath the radar. So it's kind of like there's a bunch of different dudes have been given an opportunity already because Trent Boult has already played fewer games each year across the formats, but that doesn't make up for the lack of a lefty. So it is quite an interesting situation that involves a lot of pondering.
Yeah, I wonder, because it does feel like just in general, the seam bowling stocks and domestic cricket probably need a little bit of an upskilling. Like, just there's a lot of good bowlers there, but it's also like we've had this 5-year period probably where, particularly in 2020 cricket, we have seen, like you say, like this merry-go-round of guys who are on the sort of like B team kind of level, like reserve type cricketers, not quite Black Caps level, but in the position where they should be pushing for that, and they've sort of just recycled around each other, like just around in circle. You get a turn, then you're out, then you get a turn, then no, then you get a turn, no, that didn't work. Okay, we'll go back to the first guy. And like there's a lot of dudes there who just haven't quite pushed on to the next level. Matt Henry is probably Matt Henry is the exception to that, but then also he wasn't really picked in that capacity. He was already ahead of that kind of thing when he started getting Black Caps gigs. But just as someone who's a couple years younger than like Southey, Boult, Wagner, who have been absolutely dominating that scene for a long time. Kyle Jamieson, of course, is the other one who's pushed through. But as we've spoken about before, outside of the test level, is, you know, his white ball form's been, particularly 2020 form, has been a little bit scratchy. Like, if he didn't have the test match stats to back things up, he might, as a 2020 bowler alone, like just only looking at that format, he might also be considered in the same category as some of those like Tickners and Duffys and such. So it does feel like maybe something ought to be done just to boost up the, like, I don't know, the New Zealand cricket chucking some extra like winter sessions and upskill the seam bowlers just in general and try add a few more like wrinkles. I don't know. It might just be something that's a traditional strength of ours that maybe is below the top tier, just not as strong as in terms of depth as it has been. But there are guys like Ben Sears pushing through who are maybe the generation after the generation we're talking about a couple years down is stronger than that. What was the other thing I was gonna say? I can't remember, but
Well, I've just got
maybe just leave it at that.
So Boult, he's going to pop in whenever he wants, right? So if he's playing, it's a bonus. If he's not, all good.
Yeah.
Same type of thing happens for any deeper fringe seamers. If they're required, they're required. They're outside this group, though. I've got 6 seamers who I think Aotearoa can rely on for most of the cricket. Tim Southey, Neil Wagner, Kyle Jamieson, Ben Sears, Matt Henry, Lockie Ferguson. 2 of them bowl real fast. One of them's Aotearoa's second greatest right arm swing bowler. Matt Henry has world class flashes. The lefty is a lefty who is also uniquely fabulous. Like Neil Wagner is just the mantis. So just working with that core group of 6 bowlers, I think, is a fairly decent recipe moving forward. Get into T20 cricket, you chuck in 2 of the best T20 international spinners in the world. You need some all-round options. Jimmy Neesham, Daryl Mitchell, Michael Bracewell. That's a good collection of lads who can bowl. If we are getting super funky, Glenn Phillips, roll the arm over. That is just a decent core group that I think can be stretched across the different formats. Obviously Ben Sears isn't playing Test cricket this summer, but I think he's got a skill set that can be relied upon in a group of 6 bowlers across all formats. Am I missing anyone in that core group of 6? Ferguson, Henry, Southey, Wagner, Jamieson, Sears.
Well, I mean, only in as much as that's just the seam bowlers, not considering spinners are also going to go through plenty of overs, and particularly the shorter the format, the more spin we seem to bowl, which also helps, particularly because the shorter the format, the less Trent Boult is going to feature going forward. I'm just trying to think through
So I've got guys like
unless you wanted to count Colin de Gronholm in the Test team, but I don't think that really applies.
No, he's a straight up. He's a core bowling option. I'm happy with that.
Well, he is in that one format.
Well, same with Ben Sears. Sears isn't playing Test cricket, right? So no. That's 7 seamers and Sodhi, Santner, Bracewell. So those are 10 bowling options who I think Aotearoa still has without Boult moving forward. Still pretty good. It's not that is terrible without Boult. So I'm just curious how it looks moving forward. There is a hole for a lefty, but as well, we have kind of been brewing towards this with Trent Boult, just the amount of cricket he's been playing recently. We had an NBL final week on the weekend wildcard. Otago Nuggets, they won the NBL championship, and I believe they won. Did they win that pandemic title as well?
Yeah, they did, didn't they?
I feel like they won.
You're right, they did.
Recently,
yeah, with Jared Kenny in tow and stuff. That was a slightly different thing because it was that wasn't their normal roster because they did that draft thing. Yeah. So it was a bit of a mix and match thing. But yeah, they did win that, didn't they?
So Otago Nuggets,
I think, was on that team as well.
Yes. So Otago Nuggets basketball doing some good things with very different rosters, which is quite impressive as well. The only thing, one of the main common factors between both championships was the coach. And that's always a good sign. He's won both championships. So he's obviously, Brent Matahere is obviously doing a good job as a basketball coach with Otago. A lot of the best players, especially in that Otago Nuggets outfit, I think they had 3 American imports and they were all really good. The little bugger was draining threes. They had another dude who was basically doing an NBL Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant impersonation with his mid-range jumpers and some of the shots he was hitting. That is to say, a lot of the best players in the NBL were overseas. Xavier Cooks was MVP. I think he's Australian, let alone any other American imports. Old Tuatara had a ranger. Silas Schneider. Shout out
That's
to
the
him.
one.
And obviously we're from Aotearoa, so we don't really want to talk about the American imports or the overseas imports. And to just frame our NBL conversation here, Wildcard, you have whipped up a Kiwi NBL All-Star type of outfit. And I only requested a starting five, but you went further. You dropped a couple of bench players as well. Mad respect to the role players. Matt Henry, fine example of a role player, always ready for his opportunity. We respect every member of a squad. Squad members are integral to a team's culture as well. So mad respect to the bench players you've selected and their honor of whatever fucking award this is. Drop us the top 5 Kiwi NBL players from this season, and then we'll get into a little discussion about those 5 players.
Yeah, so there's a good reason why I felt I needed to add a bench 5 as well, is because as you said, the dominant players in the league are mostly overseas players, like imports, most of them American, and those players tend to be picked in positions where they will score a lot of points. And those positions where they score a lot of points often involve the guard positions. And so when I was looking through for like the best Kiwi players from the thing, obviously Corey Webster's there. Really hard to find another guard. Like pretty much all the teams had like a dominant import guard. A couple of exceptions, but didn't really have a point guard who I felt was on that top level. Whereas I wanted to pick like 4 big men plus Corey Webster, because all the Kiwi big men for a lot of the best teams, especially, and obviously I'm going to give like extra relevance to teams like the Tortata for making the final and the Nuggets for winning the damn thing. You know, that counts. Like I want to put playoff performances in an even bigger context. I'm thinking about this. So like if I was just picking the best 5, it would be Corey Webster and then 4 guys who were all like 6'10". But that didn't feel fair, so I sort of had to split it up. So yeah, that was the logic behind having 2 teams anyway.
This is like strictly Aotearoa basketball, and if we know something about Aotearoa basketball, we do love a big man. So I wouldn't have been mad with 4 big men and a Corey Webster. Like that would have been completely fine. I just want to make it known, Aotearoa basketball, we do love a grizzly, grinding basketball vernacular 4 or 5, right? Like we produce those like a center back in football. Like that is our production line of sport. So I wouldn't have been mad with 4 big men and a Corey Webster, but as per your explanation, that is 5 fine. So we've got Corey Webster 1 slot. Who are the other 4 players?
Yeah, so the 2 big men that I had top of all are the 2 big men who played in the final. So Sam Timmins obviously got to be there for the defensive prowess, the rebounding, popping up with some points inside for Otago, and then Rob Lowe, who had a massive season as a scorer, as a rebounder, as just doing a bit of everything. Clutch shooting. There was that game in the playoffs against was it Wellington, where he scored like the layup with 6 seconds to go, then got a steal, and then hit a like step back 3-pointer on the buzzer pretty much to take it into overtime when they won. That was one of the craziest things I've ever seen. Rob Lowe's got to be there. And then I would have had, I think, probably Tom Vodanovic and Ty Wynyard there as well if I was going to go with the 4 big men and Corey Webster. But to mix it up, we'll chuck in Sam Dempster, most improved from Nelson. Shot like 40% from 3 or something like that, 32 years old, and all of a sudden has like his best ever season by a mile. Gun shooter, already a really good defender, and that's actually culminated in him being called up for the Tall Black squad to go play in Japan very soon, which is awesome from him and gives him a little bit of a tip on the scales there. And then I don't know, I just couldn't go past Hiram Harris for the other spot. He's just the most fun player to watch because he does absolutely everything. He scores, he blocks shots, he rebounds, he gets assists. He just everything you need him to do, he will do, and then some. He gets the energy plays. As I say, like he wouldn't have been in the starting 5 if I wasn't trying to pick by positions, whatnot. And even then, I've pushed Corey Webster up to just starting point guard just to fit it in. But Yeah, no, there's always room for Hiram Harris. As for the bench,
Whoa.
okay, we'll go through the
Yeah.
start. We'll go through the first five first.
So Hiram Harris, I did see him like bringing the ball up the court a lot. Hawke's Bay Hawks.
Yes.
Yeah. So like he does everything a big man does. Rebounds. Like he, despite the difference in physical stature, Hiram Harris probably does a lot of the same mahi that Timmins and Rob Lowe do. Sam Timmins, not Sean Timmins. Sean Timmins, rugby league player for your Dragons, maybe?
Maybe. I don't think so, but
like an
maybe.
old school player.
Okay, right.
But yeah, so Hiram Harris, he's a big man. He does a lot of big man shit, but he's also doing a lot of guard stuff. And I do have memories of him bringing the ball up court, and so I can see that as a team combination. Hiram Harris, we know he's got an NBL gig. Question mark.
Yes. Yeah, re-signed by, I can't remember now. I think Adelaide. I think it was Adelaide. Where he sort of went over and then, yeah, impressed enough when he started getting opportunities, mostly at power forward as well, I think, where he sort of has a skill set where you think the dudes who can do everything normally play like small forward, because you're going to get into more like shooting opportunities there and stuff. But I think at the higher level, he sort of found his groove when he was playing in maybe a little bit more of a simplified role where it's just like rebound and score inside. Don't worry about being an outside shooter other than like when we can get you into open spots and stuff. So yeah, they re-signed him. They added a couple more years on his contract because he impressed enough. So which is great because a lot of the depth guys in the NBL last year, depth Kiwis, didn't have their best seasons. So it was awesome to see Hiram Harris as someone who definitely made like a statement, good enough to get himself a new deal. Always a good thing to see.
Dempster, I don't have a visual for Dempster, but I think he is a bit of a journeyman.
Bald guy, yeah.
And he might have been a teacher at a local school.
I think you might be right there.
So this is great recognition for him and a Tall Blacks call-up as well. Don't imagine he's got a vast array of professional opportunities.
Probably not.
Okay. That's right.
Maybe dominate at the Tall Blacks. You never know.
Breakers, if you need to get back to your DNA.
Strange signings, yeah. Breakers made some strange signings. They wouldn't put it past them.
Breakers mana, Breakers DNA. Get fucking Dempster in there. That's what you need. Lowe, Timmins, and Webster. Timmins is with the Breakers.
He is.
Lowe
also with the Breakers.
Woo! And Webster
competing for a spot come and Corey Webster has made the tantalizing move to the Perth Wildcats, which is I actually can't wait to see that. He signed for them a couple years ago. Do you remember? Corey Webster did signed for the Perth Wildcats and then backed out before the season started because he got an opportunity in Europe or something like that. Then ended up coming back to the Breakers and then had a weird time of it with the Breakers through injuries. And then there was the stint where they released him, went to China, came back on a new contract, released a year into that new contract as well. All sorts of strange stuff. He didn't always help himself there with some of, vaccination wise and things like that. But like also just never felt like he got too much of a fair treatment in terms of you got this dude, an import caliber local player. You got to put him in a position to succeed. And that never really felt like the Breakers did that. But at Perth, what do we know about Perth Wildcats? They're like the Melbourne Storm of the NBL. Like they are a team that will get the best out of their players. They don't sign players that they don't think are good enough. They've up until recently they had made the finals 30 years in a row, but they missed out last season or the year before. I forget which, but they're a franchise with a point to prove, and Corey Webster's a huge statement signing from them.
All right, rattle off your bench players. Less detail, just drop it like it's hot.
Yeah, to be fair to the bench players, you do get less detail. But Ethan Rusbatch was in contention for the top thing as a dude who had a bunch of 3-pointers and I think the second top scoring Kiwi player, but just not really shooting at the highest percentage. Big game one week and then sort of 3 for 12 the next kind of thing. But he's easily done enough to crack the bench there. He's playing with Hawke's Bay. Chucking Nico McCulloch as well as the second best Kiwi on the championship team. That was what tipped him over a lot of other point guards who are in a similar, like Jaden Bazant was the guy I was really going back and forth. I probably would have edged Bazant just head to head, but McCulloch won a championship, so that tipped the scales back in his favor. Tom Vodanovic just doing Tom Vodanovic things, shooting high caliber of threes, getting heaps of rebounds, just a tough bastard who you can't push out of the way. Always has an impact on the game, no matter what he's doing. Just incredibly fun to watch. Ty Wynyard, massive breakouts. Well, I kind of think he probably should have been the most improved player. At least he should have been more higher in contention there, where he just got himself really fit. And a lot of that, I think, was probably from playing 3x3 basketball too, where he was, on the Con Games team, on the World Cup team, where it's really quick, really rapid, and he looks in fantastic shape. And that's led to him just taking a massive leap, especially defensively, where he was absolutely fantastic. So Ty Wynyard's there. And then I'll chuck in, how could you not? 17-year-old Dante Russo-Nance is like the development player on the bench here, but also a development player who can score 20 plus points in a game and hits clutch free throws and does all sorts. He can dunk, he can shoot threes. He's actually for his age, I think a fantastic defender. I think he's got the scope to really grow into a great defender in the future where, he's getting a heap of steals, things like that. So Dante Russo-Nance is one of the most exciting prospects we got at the moment. Fascinated to see what he does next. I think he's probably a year away from being able to go to college because he's actually still at high school. So will he do the NCAA thing? Probably. And if so, I would expect some pretty high level of recruitment going on there. Great opportunity for the Breakers to grab him as a DP for next year, but maybe that's not in his plans. I don't know. That's up to him what he wants to do next. It's also up to the Breakers because you never quite know that. You never know what they're going to do, but it just seems like that one's just sitting there waiting, whatever the basketball version of an open goal is, I guess a free throw, or technical free throw, I don't know. But Dante Russo-Nance, fantastic player, and also raised his game in the finals too, which is big.
Is there anyone else that you're excited about moving into the other professional leagues, Australian NBL, or any of the global stuff from that NBL campaign?
I'd like to see what Taki Farrington does next, because I do think he's good enough to. I think he's still young enough to get a DP gig. I think it's up until the age of 25 you can be a development player. So I don't know if his stint in Germany disqualifies him from that or not, or maybe he just wants to go back to Germany, in which case that's also pretty cool. That'd also be a unique career path. So I like to see what he does. And there's a lot of free agents that played NBL over the last couple of years in Australia, playing NBL in New Zealand this season, who have not currently got deals. I think Jared Kenny is one, who's normally there or thereabouts. Jordan Natai is another one. Quite a few guys, Max Darling, guys like this. Ty Wynyard is another one who's in that bag. So there's a few of those kind of guys who maybe they'll get in as an injury replacement or something like that, because most teams have pretty much filled their rosters, but there might be a bit of room elsewhere. You never know. If not, where do they go from there? I don't that's also kind of an interesting thing. Could some of those guys get deals overseas or whatnot? I don't know, because the stocks have dropped in the NBL, the Aussie NBL. Then we had 20 players take the floor from 20 New Zealanders take the floor in each of the last 2 years. We're only at about 13 signed up, and that is including you got to context. Yanni Wetzel's gone overseas to Europe. Finn Delaney's gone to Europe. That's part of it as well. It's not just that guys are being dropped. It's also that some of the best guys have left. But yeah, we'll see if we can add to that 13, because there is a little bit of wiggle room still, and there's definitely the players available as well.
The Aotearoa Under-20s Wahine football team wildcard had a 2-2 draw with Colombia, which apparently wasn't a good result in the context of their tournament, I think. There was also a exceptional goal as a highlight as well. A couple of them. So I'm assuming this is all peripheral. I'm looking at this from the outside looking in. So this is all your beat. So they haven't qualified for the next stage of this Under-20s World Cup. That's it.
No, out in the group stage. fourth place in their group, but they got some good company because Germany are also been knocked out of that group at the group stage, and they've actually won this tournament multiple times in the past, going back a wee while, but still.
So how are you
out, but not disgraced?
So how are you kind of viewing the campaign? Are you, because I think what we're seeing across all football is there's this just rise in talent, and this applies to rugby league, as we say all the time. This applies to basketball. It applies to cricket. There's just this elevation of quality and quantity for all these sports, men and women, and I think you're seeing that a lot with the Wahine football program and system in Aotearoa, even though some of the, like, you look at the results. So you might look at the Wellington Phoenix Wahine results last season and be like, oh, what's happening there? Like, they're not doing anything. You might look at this under-20s World Cup team and think like, oh, they kind of sucked. Nothing's happening there. But I think if you watch any of the games and then also do a bit of research and follow a lot of your coverage of men's and women's football in Aotearoa, you can see that there are some pretty amazing things happening. So just, you can get into like a full-on debrief of the World Cup, but we probably need to wrap up the podcast at some point. So I'm thinking more just like, how is it true that there's just mad optimism and hope and positive energy around a lot of this football stuff, specifically Wahine football, women's football in Aotearoa? Is that a sensible, logical, kind of common sense approach to what we're witnessing here, as opposed to some of the surface level assessment of just results and that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I think so. I think the optimism is fair. I have written the big debrief of the World Cup, so I don't need to do it for the podcast. It'll be up by the time this is published as well anyway. So suffice to say that I don't know. I thought the 1-1 draw with Mexico was pretty good. It was probably their most winnable game, but they weren't quite able. They weren't quite able to get that over the line. It didn't help that there was also a game where they were playing in like the middle of the day, like heat and humidity in Costa Rica. First game of the tournament. A lot of these players are from the A-League last season, which couple months removed from that one finishing, so they're in like deep in their off seasons as well. So it was a little bit of a tricky one to get up and running. They defended pretty well though, like pretty valiantly, given you've got players dropping with cramp all over the place and tiring up and exhaustion and whatever. They managed to scrap out a pretty solid 1-1 draw there. The Germany game, even then, they lost 3-0 to Germany, but one goal was a counter-attack in stoppage time at the very end of the game, when Ferns were pushing to try and get a goal for themselves, and Germany just hit them on the break and scored to make it 3-0. It was 0-0 at halftime. Germany were looking pretty rattled. They'd lost to Mexico lost to Colombia in their first game, then lost to Mexico in the third game. And the Ferns had them on edge for a lot of that first half. Just weren't quite able to this is probably the case in all three of their games, just weren't quite able to be precise enough, which is a problem that you saw with the Wellington Phoenix too. Like the passes being a meter off target or something, and then it means the player's got to wait for the ball rather than being able to run onto it in stride, that kind of thing. At a high level, that breaks down that's the difference between getting a move that leads to a shot and a move that leads to just having to pass back to your defender because you're covered. That kind of a lot of those little moments, and they had some troubles passing out from the back at times. Early against Colombia was one of them. But they kept at it and they were confident. And it's these are the kind of things you don't even see from New Zealand teams 5-10 years ago when they'd go to these tournaments. Now you see it regularly where they're turning up, trying to play like football, trying to pass the ball around. That's 60% possession against Colombia. I thought that was a pretty strong performance from them. It's just there was one weakness, one Achilles heel that they had, which is they could not deal with the pace of the Colombian attackers. And that's not a tactical thing necessarily. That's just literally they're faster. What are you going to do? They're better athletes in that way. There's not a whole lot you can do about that other than sitting deep, and then that limits what you can do in attack, because stretching the game further back towards your own goal kind of thing. And they had to go out and try score goals. And you saw that they took a lot of risks, and some of that paid off, some it didn't, but they scored two outrageously good goals. Millie Clegg's first one, and then Charlotte Lancaster with the second one. Those are the kind of goals you don't normally see New Zealand teams kind of scoring at Youth World Cups. So while the results didn't pan out as well as they might have, a little bit more luck with the scheduling or just a kind of draw, and maybe they could have snuck a win or something like that. I don't know. And that might have been enough to take them into the next round. But 2 draws and a loss is a pretty commendable effort, I thought, particularly when you combine the way that they tried to play, some of the promising things that you saw, and then also like mistakes that were made are mistakes of inexperience. The same thing with the Wellington Phoenix, and that's not a coincidence because you've got the same coaching staff and Gemma Lewis and Natalie Lawrence, and a lot of the same players. Like pretty much the spine of the team was the Wellington Phoenix again. Not a coincidence that they would have crossover weaknesses, but a lot of those things are like just not quite making or trying to achieve with one pass what you should be doing with 2, like a cutout ball to the wing which goes off target when you should just be passing out to your fullback and they pass up to the wing, and you get the ball where it needs to go, just as like, a little bit more slowly but more accurately at the same time. Like things like that, composure, and like these are issues of inexperience, and it's an under-20 World Cup, so obviously that's going to be the case. Like that doesn't take away, those are things that do grow. Like it's not a lack of ability, it's just a lack of, I don't know, opportunity. But of course it's that at that age. What I'm saying is that these are the kind of things that these players keep playing at high levels, they will figure that out. It's not about being, I don't know what an example is. Like
I feel
if you want to play in the NBA and if you want to be a center in the NBA, or just anyway, you want to play in the NBA and you're 5'5", it's not going to happen, But if you want to play in the NBA and you're 6'5", but your jump shot's a little bit crooked, you can learn a jump shot. Like it's that kind of thing. You can learn, you can figure that out. You will figure that out if you put in the hours and the time and get the opportunity. Which is why I have no less optimism about this team and what they can achieve and what these players can do moving forward after the tournament than I did before the tournament. And I think it's not really about what you achieve at these Youth World Cups anyway. Like, unless you win the thing, that's obviously something. But really the measure of the team is when you look back at that squad in 5-10 years time and be like, damn, that was good. Like, look how many strong players, look what all these players have gone on to do since. Look how good that team was. That's kind of the measure of these teams. And I think this one has, high potential to be looking at some very, very talented players from this unit.
Sorry, I interrupted because I just felt like I had a good summarization of what you're talking about with the polish and kind of class.
Yeah.
It feels like Aotearoa football, men's and women's, we've gone from a very stock standard Aotearoa big man NBA centre back type of style of football. Now we've got some creative flair. And the next level of that creative flair is doing that consistently with polish and class and precision, right? So it's like, yeah, we've got more skillful players in the All Whites and the Football Ferns and the systems they draw from. But that's like the stage of football development.
Yeah.
As you get it, like, we're coming from a very stock standard Kiwi football vibe. More recent years, the past 5 to 10 years, a lot more creative flair has come through. And then the next level of that is turning flashes of creative flair or just players who have a bit more creative flair, they get more experience. They're more comfortable with who they are, what they do, more mature. And then that turns into All Whites and Football Ferns teams scoring a lot more goals and being a lot more confident and a bit more razzle-dazzle. And I think those are themes that we've talked about through all our podcasts. And it just seems like that might have been what this specific under-20s team requires. But also, we don't necessarily cover youth World Cups, right? Like that, who gives a shit, to be honest? Like, we're here covering Aotearoa sport as best we can, but also, like, I'm not worrying about the under 20s Rugby World Cup or, you know, a junior hockey World Cup. Those aren't the games or tournaments aren't that important for me, but I do reflect on what I do for the junior Kiwis. Every year there's a junior Kiwis team. I don't cover the game because who gives a shit about the game? It's an exhibition game. But you can learn about the players to then set you up to learn about them in the NRL. So every time I cover the junior Kiwis, it's a meet the junior Kiwis. Like, these are the players New Zealand Rugby League has selected to be the junior Kiwis. So maybe, like, we should learn about them as players going forward. And that's, I think, the vibe coming out of that under 20s Wahine team. We did throw up some names in the variety show for, like, just as far as young women's footballers goes, so check that out. And all your coverage includes a lot of information about the players, where they're at, where they're heading. So all of that information can be found elsewhere as well on the niche case. Quick check-in with the Wellington Phoenix here, wildcard. A-League season hasn't started, but the Wellington Phoenix are making some waves. They're doing some shit. Speaking of class and polish and scoring goals and a bit of razzle-dazzle, that's all there with the Wellington Phoenix and what they're up to right now. I don't know if I can, like, ask you a specific question to wrangle your kōrero here, but I'll give you a couple of minutes just to let loose. How about that? Wellington Phoenix in the Australian Cup?
Yeah, formerly known as the FFA Cup. I don't know why they changed it, but they did. Yeah,
the Aussie
they'd beaten
Cup. The Aussie Cup.
The Aussie Cup, yeah, the Aussie Cup. They'd beaten team from Tasmania, I think, in the round of 64, it must have been, and then round of 32, and then that puts them into this round of 16 game that they had last night against Melbourne City. First time they're up against another A-League team, and yeah, 1-2-1 into the quarterfinals. They looked really good, I thought, especially in the first half where they scored both their goals. There was like a lot of Bosnia Krajev got his starting debut after coming off the bench and scoring in the first game, that the first cup game that they played. He looked decent, all arms and legs. That guy is like, a little bit of long limbs on him, but he's quite a good technical player, and he looks to, like, push the ball forward and be progressive with that kind of stuff. So that's cool. Ben Old looked really sharp. Like, two guys to highlight, I think, of the youngsters. Ben Wayne scored another goal, which is great. Lovely header. Out jumping Curtis Good as well. He's like veteran A-League centre back and getting dominated in the air by Ben Wayne. So that's always a good sign. Ben Wayne absolutely loves a cup goal. He always seems to score in this competition. So they are trying to sign a big man centre forward. Like, that was the news. They want to sign a centre forward who can be an aerial threat. An import, of course. Ben Wayne just, like, putting his hand up saying, don't forget about me, I can do that thing too. But the two young players to really highlight from that performance, I think, Ben Old and Callan Elliott. So Callan Elliott at right back. Obviously, Louis Fenton's retired. Tim Payne didn't play this game, but did play centre back in the first game. I think Tim Payne's probably still I don't know. I get the feeling he's probably still being lined up as the top choice right back, or else I think they would have signed another right back if that wasn't going to be the case. But maybe they still will. I don't know. But Callan Elliott's looked really sharp, I thought, not just in this game, but in the first one as well, playing at right back and just really, like, I don't know, there's a different energy to him. He's looking fit, which is one thing, because he was in and out a little bit last season. I think he got COVID at one point, and there was another injury too. So a couple, like, sort of extended breaks. I mean, it was kind of a studded season for him. But he looked fit. He looked aggressive. He was taking guys on, looking to get forward and whipping crosses and beat defenders and stuff like that. That was exciting to see. It just looked like he was playing with a level of confidence that I don't know that we've seen from him at this level before. And I'd say the same thing for Ben Old as well. He was doing the same. Like, he immediately came into the A-League and looked like certain elements of his National League stuff, Phoenix reserves, translated immediately. Like, his strength on the ball, deceptive. He doesn't look like a strong guy on the ball, but he's got good balance and wins a lot of free kicks. But last night you saw a different version of him where again he was also like he was beating defenders. He was really looking to get forward and play like a winger, not just as like an inverted 10. He was trying to do a bit of all of that stuff, imposing himself on the game in a way that I don't know that he's done in quite that way before. So if he can take that into the regular season as well, then I think Callan Elliott's potentially in line for a breakthrough season. I think Ben Old is absolutely in line for a breakthrough season if he can do that kind of thing. So exciting signs there from the Phoenix. And the midfield looked really good with the midfield looked a lot better with Clayton Lewis starting there. They've obviously got Stevan Ugarkovic to come in there alongside him, who hasn't been able to play these games. Second half, they got a little more scratchy. Like the Melbourne City switched things up a little bit, got a lot more on the front foot and kind of pushed them back quite deep. And eventually did pull back a goal with about 5 minutes to go. I think Matthew Leckie scored. So that made it a little bit frisky towards the end, but the Phoenix closed it out nicely. Like they defended their lines when they had to defend their lines. It wasn't pretty in the second half, but they did the job. And that takes them through to the next round, another cup run. Like they'd never won more than one game in this competition in a season prior to last year when they went all the way to the semifinals. Here they're one game away from making to the semifinals again. So good signs. And just the way they attacked was really nice. Like I just was watching this team getting out in transition as they often try to do, but without like a Joshua Soterio, you can't be as direct in those counter-attacking moments as they have been. But what you saw instead was Costa Barbarouses is just like genius level off the ball movement. Ben Wayne having someone who can do that kind of thing gives him an idea of like what he should do as well. So he's able to maybe he can't make the first run, but he can see that Costa's making this run. So therefore I can play off of that. I need to make this kind of run. You got Ben Old swooping in and out. And Kraev is obviously a very clever player off the ball. Like, just they would be attacking in transition and you'd have movement in like 3 or 4 different areas and it's not all going in the same direction either. It's like that kind of thing just looks sharp. And that's the main takeaways from that game, I think, is just like, as long as Ufuk Talai's there, this team is really good. And they've got a lot of players who have been working with Talai now for a couple years. So they know what he's asking them to do. And you can just see that like this is effectively preseason for them and they looked sharp, and that's good. Like a lot sharper than Melbourne City looked, if we're being honest. I think Melbourne City will be levels above that come the real stuff, but that's impressive. That's all positive, optimistic stuff for the Wellington Phoenix moving forward into an A-League season where they will actually have home games. You know, that makes a big difference too. They'll actually have some home games, and I'm pretty confident about what they can achieve this season. I think it's going to potential to be a really big campaign for them.
When's the next Aussie Cup game?
2 weeks.
2 weeks,
I believe.
Cool. We will keep an eye on that. You mentioned home ground advantage, Wildcard.
Yeah,
and I noted in the Monday email, I did a little note about the Warriors Mount Smart attendance. And off the top of my head, I believe the attendance for their most recent game against the Bulldogs was the 3rd highest attendance of the round. So, yeah, home advantage is kind of important in professional sport. And when you take out home field advantage, you have a pandemic situation for the Warriors, the Breakers, and the Wellington Phoenix, where we need to release our judgments and expectations of those teams, things that folks conveniently forgot about during those times. Question. The Wellington Phoenix, you mentioned the Knicks reserves team. That is a Wellington Phoenix reserves team made up of Wellington Phoenix players competing in what competition?
The Central League, effectively, and then also they have an automatic boost into the National League. They would have qualified for the National League anyway, based on their results. But they will also be playing National League at the end of the year. And well, actually, not the end of the year; it's earlier now. I think it starts in October. So there's that too. That's an under-20s team as well.
So it's a team consisting solely of Wellington Phoenix players.
Exactly.
So if the Wellington Phoenix were the Warriors, they would have lost that team and then put 5 or 6 players from that reserves team into, say, a made-up scenario, Miramar Rangers team. That is the equivalent of what the Warriors have been doing with Redcliffe Dolphins. And moving forward, not only do the Warriors return to Mount Smart and play home games, the Warriors have now announced that they will return to an SG Ball team and a New South Wales Cup team. They had an SG Ball team that started 2020. They were pretty good. They won a bunch of games, and in the mark of junior teams, and what's important about junior teams, most, if not all, of those SG Ball players from the Warriors 2020 team have moved on to other NRL opportunities. Some have played NRL. Viliami Vailea, Taniela Otakulo have played NRL from that team. Some have moved into the Redcliffe Dolphins situation with the Warriors. Others have moved on. Dayon Amatuanai is playing reserve grade for the Panthers. Sione Mawalo is with the Raiders. Someone like TJ Devery is playing for Burleigh Bears. Vaka Sikahali, he is playing for the Burleigh Bears as well. All these players have moved on, or not all of them, but some have moved on. Some have stayed with the Warriors, but they are really good players, and the Warriors did a good job of recruiting them for the SG Ball team. Then, of course, you lose the SG Ball team and you lose the New South Wales Cup team. They did have a New South Wales Cup team playing before the pandemic, early in 2020. They lose those teams because of the pandemic. They didn't lose those teams because they decided to lose those teams. They lost them because of the pandemic, and then they made the most of a shitty situation by trying to get this collaboration with Redcliffe Dolphins. And not ideal, but making the most of this situation has resulted in, like, I think there might have been from the weekend, you had Rocco Berry, Adam Pompey, Pride Pedersen Robati, and Jackson Frey. They are all Warriors players. Dunamis Louis is now a Warriors player, but the Warriors picked him up because he was playing for Redcliffe and they needed a middle forward. So last weekend, the Redcliffe Dolphins reserve grade team, Queensland Cup team, had 4 or 5 Warriors players in a team of 17. Going back to New South Wales Cup and having that luxury means that all 17 players on the field for that game are Warriors players. So the Warriors are going from having 5 out of 17 players to having 17 out of 17 players. Massive difference, right? It's a bit trickier to compare what the SG Ball situation will be, because the Warriors had 2 or 3 players in the Mal Meninga Cup team for Redcliffe, which was under 18s. And they have hovered around the 5 players in the Redcliffe Dolphins under 21s team. Now they're going back to SG Ball, so I don't think any of the players who were with Redcliffe are going to go back down to SG Ball. They will probably try to move into reserve grade. But the Warriors are going from having 2 or 3 players in under 18s, 5 players in under 21s, to having a team, 17 players of Warriors who are Warriors players in an under 18. I think it's actually under 19 SG Ball now, moving forward. So what's 17 plus 17 is 34. We're hovering around 10 out of 34 players in Redcliffe under 21s and Redcliffe reserve grade. What's 34 plus 17? 40, 51?
51.
So you've got Redcliffe under 18s, Redcliffe under 21s, Redcliffe Queensland Cup. 51 players play every week. The Warriors might have 10 to 15 of those players. Now they're going to have a full New South Wales Cup team and a full SG Ball team. It's a massive difference. Everyone conveniently overlooked this when they were talking about shitty Warriors development. Warriors can't do this. Warriors can't do that. Yeah, because the fucking pandemic happened, bro. And now we're seeing a bit of a return to the status quo. And what I think is going to happen is you're going to have most of the under 21s players. All these players are up for grabs from the Warriors and other clubs. So we'll keep on top of this moving forward over the next few months. But you're going to have players like Ali Leatawa, the Kepu twins, Jacob Laban, Zion Mai'uu and Dimitris Sifikula, Leighton Finau, they are all named in Redcliffe under-21s this week. And they are likely to go up to New South Wales Cup next season. And then all the players that the Warriors have in Auckland right now at a younger age bracket, they are going to be the players who make up the under-18, under-19 SG Ball team. So any thoughts on that, Wildcard?
Well, other than the obvious, like 51 players getting games each week is a lot better than 10 to 15. Yeah, that adds up. And often with development as well, like with player development, when you're dealing with young athletes, it's often not about like, every now and then a LeBron James or someone comes along, it's like everyone can see this guy's going to be a superstar, no dramas. Often, aside from that, it's really hard to predict. You don't know who's going to like suddenly have a growth spurt or something, or just like someone something clicks for them, potentially off the field, not even on the field, just something clicks, or they figure out a new skill or something like that that just unlocks something in their game, and they go to a new level which nobody expected necessarily, or some, late bloomers, or just the consistent players that hang around and outlast everyone, or things like that. You really can't predict a lot of it. A lot of it is just like luck of the draw. I don't know. But as far as a team goes, trying to optimize that kind of stuff, that's why you just need as many lottery tickets as possible. You pick as many of the best players at that age as you can, and just give them all the tools, the coaching, the whatever that you can, like everything you have to offer them, and then see who rises to the top. That's often how junior development works. And if you're not only having like only 20% of the player capacity that every other team mostly has, obviously that's a handicap in itself, but also you're outsourcing the coaching and stuff like that when you're just linking into Redcliffe. They're not just being like, how do we develop these guys as players? They're being like, well, we're a proper team trying to win games, so you guys just got to like fit in or get out kind of thing. The one other thing I'd say on that is, it's a great quote from Adam Blair, who's going to be coaching the SG Ball team for the Warriors. It seems like a good get. Like, he seems like a good personality for that kind of thing. And he's talking to, like, the overall quote, which they tweeted out, was just a lovely thing about him talking about developing humans as well as players. Because as we know, like, more than enough examples, that tends to be the best way to do it. Like, better people often make better players. And those kind of life skills aid you on the field as well. So that's all good stuff. There's a sentence within there when he's talking about like being a mentor and how he didn't necessarily have that coming up himself, and where he's like, that was me once. I wish I had someone like myself that could help me be me. And I read that and just thought that's a lot of personal pronouns. I wish I had someone like myself to help me be me. It's not what he means. It's not like he's trying to make it out like I'm the best and I wish it's did you see that Antonio Brown thing, the NFL dude, the other week, where he did put out this random statement being like, the things I regret the most about my career, it's not about when I called my coach a cracker, or about the time I got gangrene in my feet because I hung out in an air balloon, or these weird dramas that he's been through. These things actually happen, by the way. It's like, no, my biggest regret in my career was that I never got to see me play live. It's like, yeah, I could watch the TV stuff, but I can't watch myself like live in the crowd. I'd be there to witness it because I was too busy doing it. It's like unbelievable stuff from that dude, but it's just shades of that accidentally from Adam Blair and that thing, which I thought was very funny. But I think he'll do a good job with that team. I think he's the right kind of leader with the right kind of mana to bring that kind of stuff out, and the return of SG Ball for the Warriors.
Yeah, I couldn't give a shit who's coaching the teams or give a shit about Antonio Brown, but you did. Amongst your weird stuff there, you did raise a good point about trying to fit in with the Redcliffe Dolphins. So another key idea here, we've got the Redcliffe Dolphins under 21s, they're third. Redcliffe Dolphins reserve grade, they are third. So it's good that they are third and they are winning games with Warriors players in those teams, Redcliffe Dolphins are also preparing for NRL footy. So any of those under 21s lads, like maybe a Ali Leotawa, who has scored a lot of tries starting centre, or a forward like one of the Kepu twins who seem physically ready to play against men. Redcliffe Dolphins are not going to select them for reserve grade ahead of Redcliffe Dolphins players. Because the Redcliffe Dolphins are a separate entity who want to win as many games in reserve grade as possible, and there is no incentive for them to develop Warriors players, obviously. Also, they might have players that they are trying to prepare for NRL footy next season who they are incentivized to develop those players. So what is better for development? This is where I thought you were heading down the right track with your development stuff, but you took a wonky turn, which we don't mind. The Warriors can then put some of these young players into reserve grade where their development is amplified. We all know the younger you are playing sports against adults, it's going to be better for your development, as long as you're not getting like absolutely smoked or getting into bad habits like smoking cigarettes before games, which can happen when you're playing with adults. Like that type of shit does happen. But
vaping at halftime.
Yeah. But if you're like a Warriors under 21s player, Redcliffe reserve grade has no incentive to develop you. Now you're going to be put into the New South Wales Cup Warriors team where everything is about your development. You're getting all the repetitions against men, and there is some sort of pathway or plan about your development. And again, people love to talk shit about the Warriors development, player scouting, player recruitment. And I'm celebrating Kiwi NRL, so I don't view them as good or bad. I just view it all together under the Kiwi NRL abundance. But I am empathetic to the Warriors when their collaboration with Redcliffe by nature includes minimal player development focus, because Redcliffe have no incentive to develop these players for the Warriors. But they do get to play footy at least, which is a good thing moving forward. So it will be interesting just seeing how some of those players step up to reserve grade, and then which players start to shine selected in that SG Ball squad, because a lot of these players, they played in that SG Ball team and no one really cared about that Warriors SG Ball team doing well or the players that came from that team, but it was a clear indicator of like good systems in place, because a lot of good players came from that team and they won games against Australian clubs. So which players step into this SG Ball team is going to be interesting as well for the future of the club. But it's all just basically a return to pre-pandemic times, and it just shows you that everything that happened in the pandemic was making the most of a shitty situation. It wasn't the Warriors going rogue and dropping all their teams and kicking the women's team out. All that stuff was instigated by the pandemic, and now we're seeing a bit of a return to the status quo where regular professional sporting ideals will be upheld, as opposed to this wonky collaboration system.
Yeah, there's an interesting parallel there with the Breakers, I think, and trying to balance winning games of basketball with their constant fixation on developing overseas prospects for the NBA draft, which don't have time to get into it necessarily, because I do actually want to watch the end of the Black Caps game. But that kind of that Redcliffe versus Warriors type balance, I think, is sort of there in an internal case with the Breakers, where it's like you're trying to win games, you're trying to develop these guys to go high in the draft because your owner thinks it's a cool thing to do. And maybe those two things aren't as like mutually beneficial of each other as they might appear. Like it's actually really hard to do both at the same time. Because in order to learn, you have to be able to fail kind of thing, isn't it? Like you have to be able to make mistakes so that you can improve upon those mistakes and learn from them. And if you're making mistakes, you're not going to win too many basketball games. So I think there is a parallel with the Breakers there, but we might have to let it go through to the keeper for this podcast.
Quickly sum that up. If a young Warriors player is playing reserve grade and he has a shit game, he knows he's like backed for selection over the next few games. Whereas if a young Warriors player is promoted to Redcliffe Dolphins reserve grade team, they're trying to win games. They have no incentive to develop a Warriors player. If that player plays shit, he's not playing next week. It's a completely different like paradigm. And we're not in the business of predicting what the Aotearoa Warriors do at any level. But this is a better system moving forward.
Yeah, undoubtedly.
Like it does feel a lot better, and it makes it a lot easier covering those junior teams and the SG Ball team, and you can kind of get a gauge of how players are ranked in a system, as opposed to this player's playing here because Redcliffe said so, and you don't have much choice, right? Like it's been tricky, it's been niggly. It's been slept on and understated, but hopefully all of the stuff is finishing and we can get back to pure alignment where everything is like in alignment with the Warriors, where they're heading, and an actual like SG Ball team, New South Wales Cup team, NRL team, all moving on the same vibration, hopefully. Not saying it's going to lead to NRL wins, because the Warriors are cursed.
But the Redcliffe system wasn't leading to NRL wins either, so...
Yeah, I don't know what, like, the Redcliffe phase in relation to the Warriors curse. I don't know how to describe that best.
Well, maybe it's just part of the curse. No other team had to do the same kind of thing. I mean, it's obvious reasons why. It was because they're the one team from a different country was why it got difficult. But then I don't know. Maybe that's part of the curse.
I think it's like the Warriors are cursed, and then the Redcliffe is like a dose of blood magic, where it's like it helps you because like you're getting extra magic. I'm thinking about like the Lord of Light in Game of Thrones. You're getting the benefits of heightened, powerful magic, but you're sacrificing blood and human flesh.
There's always a price to pay, yeah.
Kia kaha, stay beautiful, raise your mana, Māori order. We'll be back, more podcasts next week, a lot of content everywhere. Pick it up yourself. Church.